Hi, Tahir. So nice to have
Hi,
you.
Vicky.
Hi, hi. Welcome to the dialogue, the show. And
Thank you.
it's going to be lovely talking to you. You have really made a mark. I mean, of course, Mardani and Chhichhore did the trick. But let's trace back you know, this journey, the son of somebody who is in Air Force. Your father is in Air Force. And you did a master's from Melbourne University. How did this all add up to enter Bollywood?
Yes, you're right. My dad was with the Air Force. In fact, my granddad was also in the Air Force. They were both fighter pilots. Um, when I was growing up, if anyone knows Fauji kids or they are themselves, you grow up being other gets transferred to every state. So although I am originally from Delhi, and I say that I'm a Delhi boy, I have lived in Jamnagar in Gujarat. I've lived in Allahabad in UP. I've lived in Wellington, Tamil Nadu, in Gwalior, MP. So I've had like this all India upbringing, and one of the things that sort of strung this childhood together were the movies, because everywhere we went, there used to be in the cantonment, there used to be this single screen theater, and our treat every weekend used to be that हम जाकर कोई जो नई picture लगी थी वो जाकर देखते थे. And I think the germ was then, because it was this fascinating magical universe that was so distant, but at the same time I could connect to. And at a very young age, I started poetry competitions and dramatic competitions and fancy dress competitions, and that just grew to when I moved to Delhi finally, because my dad was transferred to Air Headquarters. I joined my first official acting class, which was with Barry John in Delhi. Barry John is an acting coach,
Yeah.
for people who don't know, who has worked with Nasruddin Shah, with Manoj Bajpayee, Shah Rukh Khan. And I was a very average student in school in academics, and I would say I was a little above average in sport. But when I joined theater, Barry John was one of the first teachers to tell me that, if you work hard at this, you can be very good. And when you get that appreciation from a coach, it just motivates you so much to say that I can do this if I work towards it.
Yeah.
And from there I moved to Hindu College in Delhi University. और वहां पर मैं क्लास में कम रहता था और थिएटर सोसाइटी में ज्यादा. एंड सो आई ट्रैवल्ड विद my college theater and dramatics team to Bits Pilani. हमारे cultural और theater festivals हुआ करते थे. And from there, this was again, theater and acting was always a hobby at this point. And from my age of 15 to 21, it took me to actually come out with it to my family to say that I'm going to Bombay to become an actor. And that's when I took that step professionally. And in between, of course, there was a master's in film and theater in the University of Melbourne, which from the kind of family background that I came from, that was very important. Before you enter into any field, you should have a basic education about it. It is still debatable whether when you come to Bombay, how much of an education actually helps. But to me, I would say it has worked to my advantage, because just in terms of choosing the kind of scripts, the kind of dialogues that you can have with the writer, with the director before you take a creative call, it's just way more informed.
Cool. So how did the first film come about? I mean, how did you get your first offer?
So the first, I had done smaller parts in films before, but my lead debut, I would say, was really Mardaani. And a lot of people from the outside, it looks like, oh, that was an overnight thing that happened. But I had been in Bombay for 3 years before that film, and I had been auditioning for a number of production houses, and I had always made the final short list. Before a cast for a film like Mardaani is finalized, you call like 100, 200 people who fit that part. And I had been on the short list for a number of films before that, but never really made the final. So I was on the radar of these production houses, and they knew that this is a boy that we want to test. But I met Shanu Sharma, who was the casting director of Madani, and it was a 2-month process, and it felt like being in a reality show, because it went from 250 people to 50 people to 3. And the final audition was with Gopi Puttaran, who was the writer of Mardani and the director of Mardani 2, and Pradeep Sarkar, the director, and Shanu Sharma. And of course, the final meeting was with Adisa.
But before that, you did those films like Kismat, Paisa, Love Dil. You did a brief appearance in Kai Po Che, then you did 1x2.
Right.
And that didn't register you, in households or in the face you never came across. So was that a deterrent at some point? Did you feel that, maybe this is not for me, and Maybe I'm not in the right.
No, not at all. On the contrary, when I came to Bombay, I had no experience. I didn't know what a film set was about.
Mm.
And at that stage, there are two routes. Either you've grown up in Bombay and you've been around film sets from when you were a teenager, or you start to assist someone and try and get onto a set. And I was very clear that assist मैं करूँगा नहीं, or with no disrespect to that world, but television was not something that I wanted to do. So I was very clear that big screen is the only thing. And whether it is a 5-minute part or a 40-minute part, I would just go out there and give it my best. So I'm actually very grateful to those films, because even though they were small parts, it introduced me to that world of what the workflow is, what is the kind of pressure when all of a sudden you're faced with multiple cameras, and when you're facing timelines of we're losing light, we need to get the shot when you're working with bigger actors. It in a way, it was my paid coaching that I got before the debut in Mardaani.
But you knew all along that Rani Mukherjee is the lead there when you were auditioning?
Initially, no, it wasn't revealed who the lead was. That's a great question. Actually, no one's asked me that before. Initially, it was never revealed. You were just told that it is a senior A-list star, and it will be someone who is older because she is experienced in the police force. So I didn't know who I was reading against. And when it came down to the final 10 and they started to share the real scenes and the real script, they said that it's going to be Rani Mukherjee. And I was gobsmacked. I was, because I had grown up watching her films and I know what a powerful actress she is. And when you're playing an anti-hero, an antagonist against someone so powerful, your game has to match them. Otherwise, the scene is not going to work if you cannot look intimidating. And so it sort of, in a way, pushed me. And I remember that first day when I went on set, I didn't go to shoot. I just went to see what the set was like. And I remember seeing Rani Mukherjee, her phone call was being shot first, where she's making a threat to Walt, my character. And I saw her do 15 takes, one after the other, different variations, no fumble, no cut. And I was like, wow, this is going to be pressure.
So you went up to her and introduced yourself? Or, I mean, how did the first conversation happen?
First of all, when I went up, what was surprising to me was that the security stopped me. They wanted to know where I was going. They thought I was a visitor on set. So that's always been a funny story for me, that I was stopped on the film set of the film that I was supposed to do first. Then Pradeep Sarkar finally introduced me, and I was allowed to give her cues. So I was reading the lines that from my character that were going to be shot later, and she was responding to them while she was acting. And that was a great acting exercise, but it also got me very ready for what was going to come. It took me a few days to overcome being starstruck, but beyond, I would say the first few days, I stopped seeing Rani Mukherjee, and then I saw Shivani Shivaji Roy after that.
But were there times when you fumbled, you got intimidated by her presence?
There was absolutely, it's like one of those moments where you're going to be on the pitch, you've got that one ball and you've got to score, you've just got to hit a six or a boundary. So I went through multiple rehearsals. I used to call ADs to my vanity. I'd be like, chal yaar, tu Rani ma'am ka character par main apna padta hu. So kam se kam 15 rehearsal hamare ho jate the before we got on set. And because I knew that for me it was not only a responsibility, but it was like an exam, a test of my own ability.
What was the response you got from, girls after the role? Because I remember reading you saying that you're worried that the females may start hating you.
Right. Yes, it was definitely a worry, because if you remember the film, the kind of ring, the kind of gang that he ran, I wasn't sure what the response was going to be, but I was very surprised. But a lot of credit for that goes to the way the film was written and the way I was allowed to treat that character. And the team was very clear that this is going to be a boy next door. He's going to be an anti-hero. He's when you look at him, you don't know whether to be charmed by him or whether to be angry at him. And it was that being in the gray that confused the audience. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why it struck a chord, because it was unfamiliar, the way it was done.
So what did they exactly write to you? What did they exactly message you?
Wow, Facebook was big back in the day, and the number of friend requests that started coming, and it was just, and it was, they say life changes on a Friday in Bombay, and I've really experienced that, of like overnight on a Saturday, all of a sudden, there were all kinds of requests. I don't want to go into the details of what fans say, but some of them were really unexpected.
The next experience.
Marriage proposals, I can remember. Marriage proposals, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
You didn't reply, I guess.
No, I didn't want to. It's very tricky in that situation. If you say no, they're going to be hurt. If you say yes, then it's a tricky situation.
After that, Chhichhore was a one step ahead, coming further into the mainstream. Madani, yes, the first step. The second, Chhichhore.
What Nitish sir said, we read through, narrated what his idea was. And he told me two very simple things. He said, मैं अपने college के दोस्तों की कहानी बना रहा हूँ. So each one of them are very distinct because all of these are based on real people. And the second thing he said was, इसमें कोई hero का दोस्त नहीं है, इसमें दोस्ती hero है. And if you really look at the way that film is edited, you will walk out of the theater remembering a Sexa, remembering an Acid, remembering a Derek for who they were. So I was very reassured of that. And for me, it was great because I had played much harder characters before that in a Force 2 or a Mardaani. And there was a very emotional, sentimental aspect to Derek. When you meet him, he's like the badass in the film. You think that, yaar, ye to gunda hoga college ka. But as the film progresses, there is a very emotional side to him. He cries when one of his friends goes to the hospital. He is a loyalist. He never gave up his hostel H4 when he was given an offer. And so these were great layers as an actor to explore, to show a more sentimental side, because a large part of the audience today believes that behind an actor, there is a person and that person has shades. But I would say that there are still a few people where if you see someone play a particular part, they will only see him in that part. And that's one of the biggest changes that have come out of Chhichhore for me, where a lot of people now during the lockdown have either rewatched it or watched it for the first time on an OTT platform and said, yaar, hame to pata hi nahi tha, tu ye karta hai. Or producers or directors have connected to say that it was great. And so it's always amazing as an actor that you can get to pull off something that people didn't expect of you.
But not just Chhichhore. I think even after the Madani and Force 2, the Manto part also was, slightly softer.
Yes.
On, what you wanted to perhaps change tracks on.
Yes.
How did you go about that part? Because, to play a star in the 40s and 50s and all that, what research did you do? Did you meet people?
Right.
Did you,
again,
where did you get your ideas from? Or was it all fed to you from Nandita Das?
Again, that's a great question. No one's asked me that. I'll take up the first part of your question where you said wanted to change track. From my point of view, the effort has always been to try and do something different. What tends to happen when you do a film like a Mardaani, when it works, is that you start to get a lot of scripts that are in the same space, because that is the safest option for me as an actor and possibly for a studio. But the effort has always been, नहीं यार ये तो मैं कर सकता हूँ ना, तो इसको छोड़ के कुछ करता हूँ. So Manto was a tricky decision because there were other films at the time which would have been a safer option. But the chance to work opposite Nawaz, I'll have to admit, was one of the major things that sort of motivated me. It was the icing on the cake, and of course Nandita Das. And when that project was greenlit and we were on board, it was a small independent film that was just going to be great fun to shoot because of the kind of material. And within 1 year, we went from shooting in the villages of Gujarat to walking the Cannes red carpet, which is something that, a lot of people think, yaar, ye calculated decision hoga, but really it wasn't like that. When you decide to do a film like that, it's because what you see on paper and the people who you are working with seem to be great to collaborate with. It's a responsibility every time you're playing someone who has a real life person. And what I had to do for that was to watch a lot of films of that time and to try and watch as much behind the scenes footage of premieres and award functions of that era, just to see what it is that people do today. Like even right now when I speak, I'm using a lot of hand gestures. It's the way I'm moving and there was a definite way of like where you sit upright, and all of these modern gestures aren't there anymore. So it wasn't what I was doing, it was what I was not doing. That was a conscious choice. And yes, a lot of it, the diction aspect, because it had to be a very Urdu kind of Hindi, a mix of Urdu and Hindi, and a lot of coaching for that came from Nandita's point of view. So it was a mix of... Sorry?
Yeah, I said this material आपके पास आया कहाँ से इतना सारा जो आप बोल रहे थे प्रीमियर्स देखे आपने body language.
A lot of that material you had to find yourself. What I got from Nandita was this book. It's lying right here on my shelf. It was Manto's work. I don't know if you can see it. It's
Yeah,
blurring out at the moment, but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Manto's work. And there's a book that he wrote called Stars from Another Sky, in which Manto wrote his relationship with people in the film industries back in the 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was just an amazing of Bollywood when writers and the intellectuals used to decide what direction the industry was going to take and how much power that they had within, and then of course the partition and the dynamic between him. So I always feel like your biggest learning doesn't only come from your character and the part that you play, but also the people you spend time with. And there were days when I got to share a vanity with Nawaz when we traveled together to go to Khan, and those are some amazing conversations that I hold very dear.
So what you're also saying is, apart from the, I mean, less visual material, you got more to read, and the reading, I mean, these books were so clear that you could almost, sense it. I mean, what you exactly had to do in terms of body language and all. That's what you're saying.
Definitely, and that and the chemistry that you have was very visual in all of Manto's work, and he was a celebrated star writer of his time, and a lot of people looked at him as a celebrated star writer. But when I read his chapter on Sham and him, I said these were more like brothers, these were more like flatmates, and there was no aura to like he could wear his heart on his sleeve and be open and honest to Manto कि यार ये तू क्यों कर रहा है बकवास लिख रहा है. He would talk to him as a friend, and that was a very basic difference of what I was doing versus what everyone else was doing, where for me he wasn't Manto Saab the star. He was the guy you didn't want to see leave the city because you were so attached to him. And it's always like in every character that I try and create, you have to get your clues from somewhere. It's like putting together a puzzle, and it was a mix of the videos and as well as the reading material that helped create that.
Would you describe Sunil Gavaskar's role in '83 now the cherry on the cake?
That's a very big puzzle that you're talking about. A very big challenge because I'm not a cricketer. A lot of people on the '83 cast have been cast because they either were captains of their college team, or they played under 19, or they played Ranji Trophy. I've played gully cricket, so I had to go from one tip, one hand out hai, or garden mein agar ball direct gayi to six hai, to playing like Sunil Gavaskar, and that was a very big challenge. Balwinder Singh Sandhu was our cricket coach. He was a part of the 1983 real team, and it was 6 months of 3 times a week waking up at 6 o'clock and training like real cricketers. And it got you to as I mentioned before, there are parts of the character that stay with you. The discipline of a sportsman and the precision with which Sunil Gavaskar sir would play is something that really influenced the way I've done that part. Everything from just the grip of your bat to the distance between your feet to the angle of your shoulder to how you're looking to the walk. He was very famous for the kind of swag he would have when he walked on to the field. All of it builds to a persona. So it was, if I was to compare it to Chhichhore or to Manto or Madani, I would say '83 is a very physical film. It's about playing like your character, and this goes true for everyone on that.
For everyone. So did it all come from Kabir again, the material, and or did you, I mean, go through the YouTube, etc.?
There is, fortunately for me, there was a lot of material on Sunny sir. He's got biographies, so I read the biographies. I had the good fortune of meeting him before the shooting started. He was even on our set, and of course a lot of the backstories, because Kabir comes from the world of documentary films and he brings that into his cinema. Yeah. He's very particular on the details. कि यहाँ पर ये हुआ था, अगर Lords का scene है तो हम Lords में ही shoot करेंगे. And you have to be have a real eye for detail in order to ensure that. So a lot of it was a combination of direction that came from Kabir of, this is what I want you to get from Sunil Gavaskar, the way he spoke, the way he walked, and the material as well, like read X, Y, and Z, and then create your own. One thing that I've mentioned, I don't think I've mentioned this recently during the lockdown, but when you play a living legend, it's a big responsibility. And I feel like what I am, and here I can take the liberty of speaking for all of us, we're trying to do is, as actors, to create an essence of what those men were, because you can never really be another Sunil Gavaskar, because that would be mimicry. You just try and portray him in the best possible way that you can as an actor.
So how much of 83 World Cup, I mean, you were not, I mean, not even born that time.
Yeah, yeah.
So how much of it was given to you by your dad? Is your dad a cricket buff? Does he watch cricket?
Oh, yes, my dad is a major cricket buff. He played a lot of cricket back in NDA. So was my granddad. And you've grown up on stories of these men, how cricket overnight became a national obsession. And of course, every World Cup that I've sat through as a child, you've had this constant footage of that World Cup winning ball, of lifting the trophy. And so it almost feels like, even though you weren't born at that time, you lived that moment because you heard about it from every relative. And I can't describe to you the feeling of, because by the end of it, we had lived like a team. We were traveling together on U-rails and on team buses and training together. So you did, to a large extent, feel like a team at the end of it.
So what did you think of Sunil Gavaskar's, part in the World Cup? When you analyze the World Cup, if you,
right,
read the articles.
He was, I wouldn't want to disclose details of the film, because the way it's been dealt with is something that we would like the audiences to see when it comes out. But what I can tell you is that he was one of the senior most players in the team, and both in terms of age and of experience. He was the poster child of Indian cricket at the time. In fact, if I was to draw out like an order, it would be Sunil Gavaskar, then Kapil Dev, Sachin Tendulkar, then you would have Dhoni, and then Kohli. And so what was very interesting for me was that dynamic between Sunil Gavaskar and Kapil Dev, and between Ranveer and I, and to keep that going. What I feel is that he was one of the few players on that team who had been a legend in Test cricket, but had also at some point in his career seen one-day internationals, or limited form cricket, as they used to call it in those days as well. And juggling both those, he had a massive impact on the confidence and the emotion that you bring to a team when you go on the field, because there were very few players that the West Indies squad back in the day were intimidated of, and he was definitely one of them.
I don't know how true it is, but have you shown that he was also considered as a lucky mascot in the World Cup? That if you don't play him,
that now,
if you don't
now
play him, there was a gap of 2 matches with Australia and West Indies. They dropped him.
Right. Yeah.
And then those matches,
right. And
we lost by a huge margin.
Yes.
And then he was brought back with Zimbabwe, that 17-for-5, that historical match. But there he got out again for 0. So has that been
every match has been have been portrayed, but I would be in a lot of trouble if I gave you details of what has been shown. So all I can tell you is everything that you said is, yes, it's there in fact. But if I was to tell you what's there, not only will Kabir, Ranveer, but there'll be a lot of people that I'll have to respond to. But I'm
not getting into the details, but there must be portions where Gavaskar is also a motivating force to the team, obviously, in the dressing room, especially.
His aura brought a lot of confidence to the team, for sure. Yes,
absolutely. So now, have you grown fond of cricket? I mean,
I have not only cricket, but thanks to Chhichhore, where there was athletics and running and football involved, and 83, a whole new respect for sportsmen and women of the country who cricket today is it's a very pampered sport, and it's one of the favorites. But there are sports people out there in athletics who, against all odds, go out there and represent the country. So it's been a huge learning for me and a respect for what they do.
Disappointed that the movie has been pushed?
Well, it would be very spoilt of me at this point to say that I'm disappointed, because if we really look at the larger scheme of things at the moment, everyone in their own way is battling a crisis, whether it's in their industry or their livelihood. What I'm very confident of is that it's a period drama, and it's a evergreen concept that everyone has lived through. So whenever it does come, it's going to be one of those that brings the audience back into the theater.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tahir,
Thank you.
for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you once
Thank you.